Hey, it's Andrew from Monheim Microphones, and we're back again with one of our favorite tracking tools, the Channel Strip. Channel Strip is a super powerful all-tube preamp, DI, and EQ with a stepped output attenuator and custom input and output transformers. It is super powerful. It also has every gain stage bypassable. So you can mix with this, you can track with it, and it is completely flexible and versatile. So today we're going to be talking about some choice settings for you to make your workflow easier and just give you a basic explanation of how to use the channel strip to your advantage. So the great thing about the channel strip is it's an easy input and output. And if you're patching it into a patch bay, it's a single in, single out. That means that any gain stage on this thing is completely bypassable or can be affected with an easy switch. Say you're doing a mix and you can come in and bypass the preamp and go straight into the EQ section. You can also come in, add some extra gain to a microphone level signal, ribbon, condenser, dynamic mic, and gain it up through the transformer and push the effect of subtle compression, and then go into the preamp section and add additional gain for the preamp, and then go through your EQ or bypass the EQ. So the first section we're going to talk about is the input section. The input section is very unique in that it has an adjustable transformer input. What you're getting is gain, 6 dB settings of gain, but you're also getting the characteristic of circuitless compression. That means we're not using a compressor, but it's giving the characteristics of feeling subtly compressed. So the plus 6 dB setting feels about a 3-to-1 ratio, and 12 dB feels about a 6-to-1 ratio, and plus 18 feels about 12-to-1-ish ratio. It's a subtle characteristic. It pushes things forward. It makes them feel compressed, but you're also getting additional gain out of it. It's very unique. The other side of this is attenuation, so you can turn down gain. If you're coming in line level, you can adjust and get closer to the signal source without inflecting any characteristics from the transformer. Or you can go to input 2, which is our DI. And the DI will bypass the transformer and go straight into the preamplifier. And the preamp is our next stop on this. So if you're going to be using the channel strip, make sure the preamp is in, and there's a switch right there that bypasses the preamp for line level and inputs for mic level. And very simple gain characteristics. You're about plus 52 dB gain on there. The next section we have is called low cut. The low cut is simple. It's a high pass filter, but it's very pleasant. And compared with most high pass filters, specifically on solid state circuits, it sounds very clean and you get very little aliasing or distortion when rolling off on aggressive frequencies closer to 200 Hertz. The next section is EQ1. The EQ1 is a very powerful tool. It is all tube EQ, and it is a shelf and then a bell and then a shelf. So you're getting some low frequency gain, and it gets really more obvious up closer to 250 Hertz. The low gain characteristics for 80 Hertz and below are very subtle. It's not a full blasted bell. It's very gentle lift. It's not an aggressive bell or push of like plus 12 dB gain. It gets more aggressive as you bring it higher in frequency and more apparent as the entire shelf lifts up. The mid frequencies in the center bell position is a subtle gain characteristic. It's not as expansive on the gain, but it is really a tonal shift. And I love using band 2 and band 3 together. So I might find on band 3 a frequency that's overlapping on band 2, and I might gain it up on band 3 and cut it down on band 2. And I'll get some really cool harmonics out of it for maybe something like a bass DI or guitar DI or even like an affected vocal. It's essentially like a mid Pultec style EQ in a sense because it's all tube gain. The beautiful thing too is you'll notice in each gain stage there's a clip light. Though the clip light is going to ring red when you're really pushing the envelopes on everything. So sometimes for distorted takes or more aggressive low end, or like if I'm reprogramming drums and running them through, I want red, right? Because the red is tube harmonic saturation. And so I'll use that all day. But I can also use those clip lights as indicators where I'm overdriving the circuit. Jumping to band 3, The band 3 also becomes really useful in relation to our next EQ2. I like to use these a lot for vocal and mix tools and a boost-cut relationship as well. It's also a fine way to develop finalized tone for bass and guitar, and you can really take overlapping frequencies on this high band and overlapping frequencies with this EQ2 and develop a unique tone and print it and have something really cool that you would not be able to necessarily recreate on a plugin. Again, every gain stage is bypassable, so if we want to get rid of the EQ1 and drop it out and just go EQ2, we could totally do that. The EQ2 is really special because it jumps between standard mid frequencies and something we call X10 or an airband. And it takes all the values of the frequencies and it's times 10. So your 400 hertz is now 4K. So every value on here becomes an airband value, essentially. Again, this is bypassable just like all the other gain stages. And then we're going to jump into the output section. The output section is really special. It starts with a true 180-degree phase switch, obviously post-gain, and it's important to note that no phase shift is incurred across the EQ. It's developed and designed in a very true hi-fi fashion. All the transformers are low steel value, they're high nickel ratio. The EQ, it's all tube. There's no additional components that make extra noise. Very hi-fi in its approach. We also have here what we call 1-to-1 and 2-to-1, which is essentially our output transformer. The 1-to-1 is default. You're just passing your signal through the output transformer. When I switch in the 2-to-1, I'm now turning the output down 6 dB, and then I'm also reshaping the high frequencies and the low frequencies. There's a subtle roll-off that happens on the high and low frequencies with this 2-to-1. So if I have really aggressive high frequency content coming in, maybe through a mix or a really aggressive vocal that I have to retrack, I can actually take the signal through here and use the output transformer to reshape the tonal response on the top end of the recorded signal or the signal we're tracking. Maybe there's some really aggressive cymbals that I don't have a better mic for in the room, and I need to adjust accordingly and use the tools on the channel strip to help with that. The output transformer is your last stage to kind of affect things. We can also do some really cool creative things, like maybe we hype the top end on EQ2 and then drop in the 2-to-1 ratio, so we have this content that was created giving us higher frequencies, and then we're kind of gently rolling them off. There's tons of tonal shift and options that you have there. Our last stage here is the output attenuator. And the output attenuator is a really expensive output pot that has really unique detented positions for recall. I also just like to ride it during tracking. It has great recallability for being a detented pot, but it's also really fun to use during the tracking process. And I like to duck things down during a vocal take every once in a while. The meter has meter options as well, and you have just gotten your basic tutorial of the Monheim Channel Strip. All tube, all power, every gain stage bypassable. Check it out.